Hey, welcome to Super Social Club. I'm Jeremy, and recently, world-renowned reviewer Jim Murray has named Alberta Premium Cask Strength Rye his World Whisky of the Year. I'll review it, let you know what I think, get into Jim Murray's previous World Whiskies, see how they compare to this, talk about if Jim uses value as a determinant for giving that top prize, and also talk about his credibility as a reviewer. Let's get into it. Alright, so Alberta Premium Cask Strength Rye. This came out in late 2019. It is 100% Canadian rye whiskey, malted and unmalted rye, 65.1% ABV, cask type undisclosed, but if I had to guess, I would say maybe a combination of ex-bourbon casks, virgin oak, heavily charred barrels, I think, for this one. Let's see how this is on the nose. Nice, rich, deep flavors. Interesting with this rye that you might not get in other ones is the heavy fruit characteristics that are coming out of this. The apricot note, apricot, however you say it, really prominent, really delicious. Lots of like rye spice, of course, you'd expect in here. Bread kind of type notes, like sourdough bread, even like a multi-grain, kind of like ancient grain bread with, it has like the seeds like kind of built into it. You kind of get that in this glass. Lots of rich, thick, creamy vanilla. That's why I said maybe like a heavily charred cask. You do get those really rich vanillas, maybe a little bit of caramel as well. Really nice on the nose and pretty unique for a rye, I'd say. Let's go palate. So, loads of flavor. As you'd expect for 65.1% ABV, doesn't necessarily drink that hot. It's very well integrated. The ABV definitely brings a punch, but you're not overwhelmed by the ABV or the youthfulness of this. Non-disclosed the age, NAS whiskey, but what you get on the palate, again, that fruit characteristic carries over. The apricot, really nice. Maybe a little bit of like overripe banana, some green apple in there. You get that like stereotypical dill pickle, rye kind of note. It's not overwhelming at all. It fits in pretty well. The spices, the clove on the finish is really nice. Again, that creamy vanilla carries over. Really rich, enveloping flavors. Really nice rye whiskey indeed. And again, that fruit. Something you might not expect from 100% rye, that this one delivers really well, in my opinion. Definitely reminds me of WhistlePig expressions. Alberta Premium does, I believe, supply WhistlePig with most, if not all, of their rye. So think that 10-year-old WhistlePig rye. You get some of that characteristic in this for sure. Really nice stuff. Really impressed with this. This is how Canadian whiskey can be presented. Quality, well-blended whiskey at cask strength makes a huge difference. Canadian whiskey, well known for its mixing ability, but starting to branch out. Lots of expressions coming out of Canada now that are for the whiskey enthusiast, that can be drank neat, that stand up to other quality whiskeys in the category. Score-wise for me on this one, I'm going 87 out of 100, and for value, 65 Canadian dollars. Absolutely great deal. Bumping up that value 1.5 points. Let's get this 88.5 out of 100. Really do enjoy this one quite a bit. And like I said, this is going to put Canadian whiskey on the map. Jim Murray's, what a great accolade for Canada, getting this top prize. I believe it's going to inspire other distilleries to start producing whiskey to this quality, cask strength, presented in the way that the whiskey enthusiast wants it. So let's talk about Jim Murray as a reviewer, his whiskey Bible, his World Whisky Awards, and his credibility as a reviewer. It's kind of come into question as of recent. Let's go back to 2015. Jim Murray named the Yamazak Sherry cask, 2013 release, I believe, as his World Whisky of the Year. That's when the popularity, I believe, of his whiskey Bible really took off. First time he named a Japanese whiskey World Whisky of the Year. Those bottles started selling out, and the prices on those now very expensive at auction. Fast forward one more year to 2016, he names this the Royal Northern Harvest Rye World Whisky of the Year. The mass panic to go out and grab one of these bottles was insane. People lining up outside of the liquor stores in Ontario every single day trying to get these. They could not stock them fast enough. I have never been more disappointed with a whiskey, I think, in my life. All the hype surrounding this bottle. I remember I first got one, cracked it open, and was just like, what? This is the World Whisky of the Year? This? I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a decent whiskey for the price. I believe around 35 or so Canadian dollars. It's bottled at 45% ABV. It's 100% rye whiskey, but not even close to the caliber of previous World Whisky Awards that Jim has given out. Not anywhere close to this. I would score this one 72 out of 100 and probably leave the value at 0, thinking that's probably justified for what you compare in Canada for a rye whiskey these days. Moving on to 2017, Jim Murray names Booker's Big Time Batch Rye Whiskey his World Whisky of the Year. I 100% agree with this selection. Absolutely incredible whiskey. Still is the best American spirit I have tried ever. You can check out my review of this one. It's up here. Very limited in the bottles, believed to be just around 9,000 or so available. Secondary market prices on these have skyrocketed. About $600, $700 2 or so years ago, up over $2,000 a bottle now and still climbing. But what an amazing whiskey. The balance, the complexity, the power that this whiskey brings is truly, truly great. And have no issue with this one being World Whisky of the Year. 1 year later, 2018, Jim stays in America for his World Whisky Award, giving it to the Colonel E.H. Taylor 4-grain 10-year-old. I personally have not tried this one yet. Very rare. Prices, again, on the secondary market, super high. I believe reviews come out. Some people really enjoy it. Some people just think it's okay. Lots of hype surrounding it, obviously, bumping that secondary market value up. So I cannot speak to that release, unfortunately. 2019's Whiskey Bible names this the William Larue Weller World Whisky of the Year. Hard to complain about this one. Definitely one of the most consistent and best releases in the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. In my personal experience, I like the George T. Stagg a little bit more, but definitely cannot go wrong with the William Larue Weller. Prices on these, of course, very, very expensive on the secondary market. Although retail, you're still looking at $90. If you can potentially win an allocated lottery to purchase it at that price. Most people never ever see it at retail. Get into value at the end of this, but hard to fault Jim Murray for picking this one in 2019. All right, so that takes us to last year. His selection was the 1972 Full Proof. Now, this one came with a bit of a controversy as well, as this bottle not really seen as an elite bourbon in most people's opinion. This one is a store pick. I believe the regular release was the one that he reviewed. Unfortunately, I just don't think that the regular release was that special. This one's decent. I do like this whiskey. It is good. But when you compare it to some stuff that Jim Murray's picked Whiskey of the Year, unfortunately, this one is just not living up to it. So there you kind of have it. Let's talk values, because I think Jim does use value as a determinant for picking his World Whisky of the Year. You take a look at some of these, $35 Canadian, $65 Canadian. I believe you can get this in the States for maybe like around $40, $50 or so. Not very expensive at all. I mean, of course, the William Larue Weller is expensive on the secondary market, 10 times potentially the retail price, but you're still looking at an MSRP at $90. I believe the Booker's Big Time Batch was $200 MSRP. I'll double check it. It's either $200 or $300. Still very expensive, but for what you're getting for $200, 100% well worth it in this bottle. The E.H. Taylor 4-grain, I believe, was $90 at retail. So very affordable for what you're getting in those expressions. The Yamazaki, I don't even remember what it was on retail, but definitely affordable again for the quality ratio, so I'm told. So here's where the controversy lies with Jim Murray. And I have had the pleasure of meeting Jim Murray. I was fortunate enough to be invited to a reveal tasting of Canadian Club's 41-year-old a couple years ago. Jim was there. He named it his Canadian Whiskey of the Year. and he was nice enough to come and do a presentation and a tasting. Had a great conversation with him, actually. He kind of got into a story about Buffalo Trace back in the 90s and how he was looking to purchase some of the rye barrels because the rye whiskey was not selling at all during that time. And they offered to sell him their entire rye whiskey stock. He didn't have the couple $1 million at the time to purchase all of that, but what an investment that would have been back then if you think about it. So really nice guy. He took the time to talk with a bunch of people at the tasting, so I really did appreciate that from him. But here's where the controversy lies. The Crown Royal Northern Harvest Rye, no one on this planet is scoring it a 97.5 out of 100. This bottle is just not living up to what he names World Whisky of the Year. And there's some controversy about Jim Murray. He told me he tastes over 2,000 whiskeys a year to do his whiskey Bible. That is a large amount. 3 or 4 whiskeys every single day, taking notes, doing that. It does add up. Now, are distilleries sending him samples to review? I think the consensus is yes, potentially. He's not going out and purchasing all these. He doesn't have access to some of these stuff coming out from Canada. They're giving him samples. They're shipping them to him. So are they sending him stuff that's different than what gets bottled? Potentially. And I think as a reviewer, you need to be aware of that. Are distilleries sending you distillery-only samples? I mean, I think it happens quite a bit. You can look at something like this. Was he getting something from Crown Royal that was different than what was going into these bottles? An example where, in my experience, tasting at Spirit of Toronto, Don Livermore showed up with his newest Lot 40 cask strength, the one that was matured in, I believe, French oak. The samples that he was presenting there, very, very different than what ended up being bottled. So I think you need to be definitely aware of that. It's sometimes with these whiskey competitions in single barrels, distillers are pulling their very best stuff, putting into a whiskey competition, and then, you get something like this named like World Whisky of the Year, and, potentially people are like, what, how is that? And this is not the same stuff that I'm tasting. There's got to be something different. So there's that controversy. Looking at the 1792 Full Proof, same exact thing. People are really questioning the credibility when you name something like this, when you're putting up to, you're scoring all these the exact same score, and people try this and they're like, well, I mean, that's not nearly as good as the rest of this stuff. So where is he coming from with this? I think with the Alberta Premium Cask Strength Rye, again, a great, great product, really, really nice, but World Whisky of the Year, not in my opinion whatsoever. So Jim Murray's credibility, at question. Can you give him the benefit of the doubt that really these are just his favorites that he's tried of the year? Or is there something else at play here? Is his World Whisky of the Year award up for sale, perhaps? Don't necessarily want to slander that out there, but you be the judge yourself. Let me know what you think. Have you tried these? What's your thoughts on them? What's your opinion on North American whiskeys taking the World Whisky award away from something like Scotland, where in a lot of people's opinions, that is the area of the world that produces the very best whiskey? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe if you're new here, see more content like this. And until next time, have a good one, guys. Cheers.